Thank you, Christoph. Good to speak with you again. I know many of you are regular subscribers to our webinar series, and as Christoph mentioned, this is the third of three webinars that are designed for relative newcomers to this world of online collaborative innovation. And the third and final of this series is focused on return on investment and value-based innovation programs. So what I'm going to be doing is taking you through some insights and some observations from our clients and from our aggregated experiences that hopefully you can take some key lessons from for your own innovation programs and learn from and perhaps put into practice to deliver greater returns within your own world. For those of you who haven't attended webinars before and perhaps are new to me, I look after Hype's strategic consulting capability. And my role is really focused as a client advisor, helping organizations to develop more rigorous, more sustainable, and more effective programs. That includes a whole range of different services, including training, coaching, program strategy in health, and also innovation community management. My background is I've been working in this space for around 7 years in the online innovation and idea management space, a whole range of clients, some very large and some much smaller. And my background before working in innovation was in market research, knowledge management, information management, and new product development. Now, Christoph gave you a brief introduction to Hype. For those of you who want it written down in the slides, we have this as well for you. So we've been in business for over 11 years now, around 90 or so employees, headquartered out of Bonn, Germany. And all we do is innovation management software and associated services. And my role at Hype is to look after the associated services that help ensure that people participate in online collaborative innovation and do so at a high level of quality. Our software is installed in over 170 different organizations worldwide and has a number of our best practices actually built in. And of course, there are many things that make your organizations unique, and so to support that, this is where our strategic consulting capability comes in. So your culture, your structure, your core program objectives, these are the things that are important, and so we configure our application specifically for you to adapt to those sorts of different things, including languages and different processes that you may find necessary. As I mentioned, I personally worked with many organizations, some very large, some a little smaller. So we work with companies with several 100,000 employees like DHL, Deutsche Post, but equally we work with employees that perhaps organizations with far fewer employees such as Bernina. The common thing to take away from this is that almost all organizations find benefits in engaging their employees, customers and suppliers in their new innovation programs. It's not specific to organizational size, nor is it specific to industry. Every program that we have on here is a little different. So it may use some standard software, but the way in which it's used, the flavor in which it's used, is specific to that particular organization. So let's talk to you a little bit about who this webinar is for. As I mentioned, this is the third in a series of the basics webinar series focused on ROI. And if you're looking to establish more value from your program, then this is for you. But equally, if you're looking to establish a new program, then this is going to be relevant. And we find increasingly that those involved in online collaborative innovation want to have a clear focus on return, what value they can drive over and above conventional ways to generate innovation. And of course, if you're just interested in the principles of online innovation, there'll be some stuff here for you as well, but you may want to look back at some of our previous webinars to get some of the real fundamentals around idea campaigns, collaboration, and boosting engagement. In the previous two webinars that we ran, they were focused on in greater detail. But I will be touching on a number of those different themes as we go through. So to start off with, to get everybody on the same page, and where we have some clients joining us, we have some organizations that are new to us joining us, the Hype process looks something a little bit like this. So online collaborative innovation starts off with alignment to corporate targets. So what is it we're trying to achieve as a business? What goals do we have? What are our focus areas over the next period of time? And that's fundamental when we work at Hype, because it gives us a governance layer and an ability to report and filter on all activities that fit within a set of different strategic targets. It's increasingly common to use questions to drive innovation activity. So we work very hard at developing well-worked, focused questions for diverse groups of people to actually generate new content or capture content that exists out there, but we perhaps are not sure where it lives. So idea campaigns are becoming the backbone of innovation programs, and those two elements together form the campaign approach. And of course, sometimes we need to build and develop those ideas into something new. We need to enrich them, we need to tie them to other initiatives, actually develop business cases and more of a rounded concept in order for us to be able to push them forward. And of course, at some point, we need to assign tasks to people and roles and activities to people, and then we actually develop early-stage innovation projects. So in our world, this is online collaborative innovation. The first 2 or 3 elements are focused on typically larger groups, and the back 2 elements are typically focused on experts and specialists. Organizations are typically looking to increase the scale and diversity of opinion around innovation. That means going out beyond the normal R&D groups or normal sources of innovation activities and including a wider group of employees and in some cases suppliers and customers. A key part to this entire process though is it's focused not just on generating new content, capturing existing content, but also promoting inter-community collaboration to improve the content we already have. If you look at any implemented concept, you'll find it tracked back to a series of different interventions, different people contributing to that process, be that through a phase gate or just a brainstorming session. We want to try and focus this within our process, engineer it as far as possible as well. Of course, if we open up the doors to generating more content, we also need to be much more rigorous about the decision making and focus on the best options we have available. And this is where the campaign approach and the concepts are really helpful to a report on which are most likely to drive the most significant value for us as an organization. And again, throughout this process, it's vital that we focus on actions and outcomes. After all, there's no innovation without execution. So now I've introduced you to what collaborative innovation is online within our world, some fundamental assumptions that I think are going to be relevant to you. So firstly, there's a desire to get people involved. We accept that collective expertise is a powerful asset. We need to find a way of engineering and helping our organizations to come together online. That'll enable us to make better use of our people and our knowledge, and using that resource we can develop greater levels of innovation. But we need to give people the ability to share their ideas and their insights, the knowledge that they have, encourage collaboration because often we need a team approach in order to develop better solutions. And of course, many of us work for very large and complex organizations, and there are hidden pools of knowledge that we need to tap into in order to develop better solutions. Of course, we want to retain all of our insights, our ideas, and our concepts as we go. So we build up a knowledge repository of our entire innovation spectrum so we can call upon that in the future. So let's look at the agenda for today. We'll focus on, firstly, what we mean by ROI, or increasingly value-based programs. We'll take a look at some examples from 3 other organizations, and I'll try and extract for you some important factors from those 3 which you can take home and use and will be very helpful in constructing a value-based program for yourself. We'll look at some key challenges, of which there are a few, to developing a ROI value-based program, and some initial early steps that perhaps aren't quite covered in the previous elements. Let's start off by looking at what we mean by ROI. Now the reality is that every organization looks at these sorts of things differently. But I think a common element to think about is delivering ongoing, measurable, and sustainable business value. So we don't just do it once, we do it repeatedly, and if we embed the best practices that we talk about, we should be able to make this a sustainable process. And of course we have to measure what we do. Unless we measure it, we can't talk about it, and we can't justify why this is an effective thing to do. We'll talk more about that in a moment. We also need to accept that value is perceived differently to different people. So if you talk to your CEO or your finance director and then talk to middle managers and employees, you're going to get different reactions to what people perceive as a return on investment and the value that they may expect to see. So in some cases that'll be growth or new revenue, others it will be profitability, and others it will be more efficiency focused. And in some cases, of course, it's all of the above. And to simplicity, what I'm focusing on is anything that has a measurable financial return on it that we can talk about with others. What we find is the most sustainable programs out there from our clients always have business value at their heart. They're always focused on what return can we generate. That's not to say they don't focus on some other things as well, but they're done in parallel. The business value is really the heartbeat of the overall program. So in practice what this means is that organizations look to run idea campaigns and generate and capture ideas on things that will help their products and their solutions be more profitable. That could be looking at new markets, it could be looking to develop things that they're doing already, or anything associated with the standard innovation portfolio. So simply by adding extra insights or experience into the existing portfolio may be valuable to one organization. To another, it may be looking for completely new things, looking for breakthrough innovations. Organizations will see this differently. And it's not for us to tell you exactly how you should define what is of most value for you, but what I will say is that all of these things are important to most organizations increasingly. And of course, there's the efficiency conversation. So some organizations will think about cost savings or making a process faster, reducing the amount of risk they're exposed to when delivering a particular service or product. The overall efficiency of the organization, how we can make it even more practical, reduce risk, and all these things encapsulated. But equally perhaps looking at the supply chain where we spend our money. So it doesn't matter to us whether you look at this from an efficiency angle or from a growth innovation angle. All of these things have measurable outcomes. Perhaps some will deliver returns quicker and others will take more time, but they all are things that we can think about when we talk about ROI. The other thing I'd like to spell out for you is thinking about the time frame. And this is something we call the innovation growth gap. You may recognize that if you continue to sell your existing portfolio, your existing products and services to the same customers in the same way, eventually your margins will become eroded and revenues will begin to drop. The market will become more competitive and you'll find the customer base moves on. Of course, to react to that, what we do is we develop a new set of concepts, a new set of projects, and we hope, of course, that that will compensate for some of that drop-off in our existing pipeline. But of course, we look at financial growth targets much further out. And so if we think about the top of that green block and we compare that to the top of the light blue block, this is the difference at any particular point in time between our growth targets and what we expect our existing portfolio that we can see both in implementation and also in development will actually deliver for us. And we can calculate that, something called the innovation growth gap, as a financial figure that any company can think about. And maybe this is a good conversation to have with your finance director. It gives you a sense of how big a job innovation, the team of innovation actually has. And of course what we need to remember is that not everything that we take out to market will be successful. So we have to multiply that growth gap by our ratio of success. So if you're in pharmaceuticals, maybe it's one success for every 6 or 7 failures. Maybe in consumer goods, it's one success for every 3 failures. So think about your industry, think about your company success levels, and that will give you a sense of what kind of portfolio size we need to generate. So we talked about efficiency, we talked about innovation focus, we talked about the corporate growth ambitions. All of these things are part of the overall return on investment conversation. So now let's look at some examples from others, and let's spell out for you that other organizations are achieving some interesting returns. I'm going to start off with Nokia Solutions Networks. So their program was established in 2006, and they started off with a relatively modest number of idea campaigns, relatively small audience, and gradually grew year on year, increasing the amount of campaigns they ran, increasing the number of innovation advocates that they had, champions around the organization. But they had a clear focus from day one on execution of ideas. So not only were they generating, they also thought about how can we put this into practice and put it into the business so we'll actually achieve some measurable business value. They have a centralized governance model, so the process is repeated successfully time after time. The lessons are learned centrally, and then they can be rolled out to the rest of the organization. This is a company of tens of thousands of employees, and so it's hard for all innovation to be centralized, and a lot of it is pushed out to the locale, but the core governance around this process is centralized. And that's resulted in billions of euros worth of benefit over the last 7 years. It's a massively successful program. And as Christoph mentioned, we're actually going to be running an interview with Fabian Schlager, who will talk more about this particular story next month. A very different example, Deutsche Post, DHL. 220,000 targeted employees across 36 countries in 19 different languages, but focused on a mixture of both efficiency and growth-based activities. So this is a program that has to be adjusted quite dramatically to reflect the needs of each location and culture. It's fair to say that cost savings and efficiency is really the heartbeat of this particular program, but also with a side area of focus around growth. And as you can see, they've achieved hundreds of millions of euros worth of benefit in growth and efficiency. So again, a very successful program, but very different in nature to the Nokia Solutions Networks program, and much newer. So they've actually achieved many of these savings relatively quickly. And finally, just so you realize this isn't applicable just for very large or very complex organizations, a very different example for you. Casapelas, who are an auto dealership in Nicaragua, so not necessarily from Western Europe, not from the US. This is really from a developing market. It's a 1,000-person employee organization. And they had a successful continuous improvement program. They asked their employees to build upon that and innovate. So they had a particular focus for breakthrough innovation, things that would disrupt their market and offer a particular level of revenue potential. And after their first series of campaigns, their first phase of the program, they identified 3 new breakthroughs, each worth over $1 million to Casapelas in the first round. This was people looking at something completely new, really breakthrough stuff. And we have a case study on the Casapelas available on our website if you'd like to hear more about it. So we've seen 3 very different examples. Nokia Solutions Networks, where it's very much growth focused, DHL Deutsche Post, which has more of a cost-saving element, and Casapelas, a much smaller organization but focused on breakthroughs. So let's think about what we can perhaps learn. Maybe you're thinking, well, this is interesting, but what's the secret here? What is it underneath this that's actually giving these organizations such a significant return on investment? These are, in many cases, very, very valuable programs. Well, I can tell you, and hopefully this gives you some comfort, there is no secret here. There is no secret source. All of the things that they do are things that you can replicate in your own programs and things that we can talk to you about in detail. You'll hear obviously more about them from Fabian Schlager in November. What I'm going to do, though, is trying to draw the synergies, the common elements out of these examples and others we've seen, which enable us to take some lessons from these programs that deliver some significant ROI. Now, the great news is that all companies can have significant ROI. This process that we've talked about of collaborative campaigns and then focusing on concepts and execution is applicable to all kinds of different businesses in all kinds of different areas. There are clearly, though, some things that the organizations that do this well do consistently. So out of all of these programs that we've seen, and also those 3 that we've picked out especially, we can certainly say that in every single case they're aligned to corporate initiatives. And this is crucial. And we'll talk about each of these different 5 elements in more detail, but alignment to what the company needs to get done. Having said that, they also recognize local needs. So people with perhaps more tactical objectives in their innovation portfolio or efficiency programs are also recognized. They run numerous challenges with financial aspects. And what I mean by that is they have a focus on things that actually can have tangible euro, dollar, pound, whatever your currency is, measurable results. So at the end of the activity, be that a campaign or developing a concept, they can actually quantify the benefit they're expecting to realize or have realized. So they're considering the short term as well as the long term. Some perhaps the longer term programs have bigger returns potential, and certainly we see that, but equally the shorter, more tactical activities also have value, and in all of these cases they look at both. And finally and crucially, everything is tracked and measured. So once they've done something, they record it, they track retrospectively the value that they've seen, look and compare it to what the forecast value was, and then shout about that and share its success. So let's look at each of these 5 in more detail. So alignment. To start off with a new collaborative innovation program, we need to foster belief that this is a good thing to do. And to do that, part of that puzzle is to actually align the initiative with the things that the corporation cares about. What we find is that there's increased level of belief and confidence in the employee base if the senior stakeholders are saying, this is important, this is correlated to what we need to get done this year, and it's important that you spend a bit of your time to actually share and work with us. What we also see, of course, is if the programs are aligned, the new content that we generate is much more likely to be implemented, get funding quicker, and actually meet the goals of the people that actually pay your salary and those people that are measured on financial aspects of the business. So actually having the activities that you do aligned will deliver quicker wins, more likely to be sustainable, and foster greater belief in the overall confidence of the organization. But that, of course, is not the complete picture. We also need to look at the more local aspects, the tactical sponsorship as well, and particularly the middle managers. Middle managers will all equally be measured on things with material value aspects to them. So they'll care about profitability, they'll care about revenue, they'll care about sales, they will care about risk that they're exposed to. And we need to meet the needs of middle managers quickly, as well as aligning the program to the corporation. Now, the great thing about the middle manager group is that programs that we work on with them are much more likely to achieve quicker results, because their relatively tactical focus means that we can realize the benefits in a little bit quicker. Of course, if we can realize those results quicker, it's easier to get new stakeholders on board and actually stop other middle managers acting as blockers. So once one middle manager has seen some benefit, we can share that story. Those above them are excited about that, those to the side of them are excited, and those below them also believe and have greater confidence in the program as a whole. Now, we do need to revisit the slide we showed a moment ago, is that the senior stakeholders and formal alignment will offer the program greater credibility. We need to do both, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. So let's look about focusing on the areas of value. If you point this process at things you can measure on valuable innovations, valuable products, and the business itself, we're going to find that it has material returns. If we pointed at softer things, things that we can't measure, that we can't judge whether we've generated some benefits or not, it's going to be much more difficult to advertise and show success of the innovation program. Now, you may be thinking, well, I work in an industry where it takes us 5, 6, 10, maybe 15 years to develop something new. And in those cases, focusing just on that strategic innovation portfolio, it's going to be very difficult to build great confidence in the community. You have very little to shout about for quite some time. So in those cases, you may want to consider adding to the portfolio focus some more efficiency or more tactical activities that will help build confidence and show some quicker returns. But in short, innovate the product and the business. And think about things that have financial benefits. So if you can speed up a process, that's measurable. If you can improve cash flow, again, that's measurable. If you can reduce risk, that's normally priced into our products and services, so we can increase profitability. And of course, cost reduction is always something that people care about. That doesn't mean to say you can just run ongoing formal cost reduction programs incessantly and keep people excited. You are going to have a bit of a balance to your portfolio, but certainly elements of a program that include these things will make it much more likely that you've got something of value you can show very quickly. And in many cases, I've seen campaigns run on just one of these elements that have achieved a huge return far beyond what was spent on establishing a new collaborative innovation program. So the ROI, return on investment calculation, actually becomes a little bit of a mischoice. What we're actually talking about is maximizing value. The next thing to think about is this horizon puzzle. So we need to consider our culture and its appetite for getting involved in the big picture. If we talk to our senior stakeholders and senior sponsors and we think about us as innovation professionals, then maybe we have relatively long-term goals. Well, that's fantastic, and we know that in the long term, if we focus on things well, we may well have some very significant returns. But our culture and our organization may not yet be ready to get involved in that bigger picture and start sharing ideas that really will be transformational for us in the next 5 to 10 years. So let's think about the different time horizons. And of course, if in doubt, think about the short-term things, show some value, and then add to that work streams that look at the longer time periods. This way, we've got something that people that can get involved with relatively tactically, relatively quickly, gives us something to shout at, and actually builds greater belief and confidence in the program for the bigger picture conversations we'd like to have moving forward. Likewise, if your program is currently focused on these very long time periods, you might want to consider, as I mentioned a moment ago, adding more efficiency or more tactical elements to it to actually show that the process is powerful, it offers some value to the business on an ongoing basis, and we don't have to wait for 7 years for the next product to get out there. So think about the different time horizons that you're working on. Consider having a mixed portfolio that looks at different time horizons. This is going to help develop a much more sustainable program, which is going to deliver increasing value year after year, time after time. And if you look at the Nokia Siemens Networks program that we'll be sharing again in November, you'll see they had a slow ramp up of good, modest returns in the first 2 years, and it really ramped up in the third year, where the early stage activities they've been focusing on for longer innovation timelines actually began to be realized. But they did achieve some measurable benefit in year 1. Okay, so next, tracking and measurement. It's very important, of course, that we record the value that you generate. And I'm aware that this isn't entirely straightforward for every organization. So I'll talk about this as a slight hurdle in a moment. But for the time being, just think about how we can track, how we can measure the portfolio once it's in implementation. Now, some of you may have PLM systems which do this for you, and that's great. But as innovation professionals, we should be watching what value is realized from that implemented portfolio, recording that back so that we can shout and share about that with other people and build confidence and belief that this is a valuable activity. However, if we don't ask people what returns they've achieved, we're not going to find out. So it's very important that we keep an ongoing dialogue with previous campaign sponsors, portfolio owners, senior stakeholders, anyone that's benefited from ideas that we generated or captured within the solution, in order to see, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, what kind of returns are we getting now? Because it may well be that there's some very exciting stories that we can tell, which we're perhaps not aware of. Just simply asking the question, we can help boost engagement by sharing these sorts of success stories and boost confidence and belief in the program. Stakeholders will want to know your results, so by actually measuring this stuff as much as you possibly can, it's only going to help the program and the level of investment that you receive as innovation professionals. Okay, so we've been through some key important factors, the 5 core factors, the synergies between the different examples we shared earlier on. But yes, there's also some challenges. Not all of this is straightforward, and we accept that. So let's have a look at a number of these challenges before we think about what initial steps you may want to take. So firstly, the timeline. One thing that we do witness from time to time is a misalignment between the funding window of the innovation team and the turnaround time for the new products and services that they're being asked to develop. So if your innovation team is essentially funded for a year, but it's going to take you 3 years to develop a new product, it's hard to show at the end of that year what value you've driven. Yes, you can look at an improved portfolio, you can perhaps look at an increased value of a portfolio, but you actually don't have measurable results. So thinking about the funding window of your team is crucial when it comes to showing returns. And of course, what we'd recommend is we make sure that we show some returns within that window, wherever possible. And if that means looking at more efficiency-based activities as well as innovation activities, then so be it. It may not feel core to you as an innovation professional, but if it helps justify your existence and justify the investment that's been made in you as an innovation professional, it's a good thing to do. The next point to mention is that we should shout about identified value before it's realized. Now, you may feel uncomfortable with this, but often it may take many years to realize the value. But identified value is good enough to show that we're actually improving things, things will be better in the future, and we're going to grow and be more efficient as a business. For example, if we look to make a process 5 days quicker, that will have a quantifiable value. Now, it may not be cashable, but we can measure it. And actually tracking that, measuring it, sharing that success, it may be a number of years before that becomes cashable and that's reinvested somewhere else in the business, but we may as well shout about it now because we can measure it, because we can see the benefit that's going to be there. We need to bear in mind longer-term innovations may have a much bigger return, and often as innovation professionals we're hired to focus on those sorts of things. But accept shorter-term innovations, more tactical things, efficiency-based activities will deliver some quicker returns, so our advice is to do both. And certainly if we look at the lessons from our most successful clients, those with very strong value-based returns on their programs, they certainly put an investment in both areas. The next point is sharing success stories. And many of you share with me that you find it frustrating that the people that you've helped, the sponsors, the stakeholders that have run campaigns, that have sponsored campaigns, don't share with you or don't share as much detail as you might like on the real value or the expected value of the benefit they're about to see. Maybe it's because it's hard for them to measure, maybe it's because they don't want it made public. And this can be tough, especially as an innovation professional. You're keen to track and measure the returns that you see. Well, success stories are crucial to the long-term support of the program. So it is tough, but what our advice would certainly be to be patient and don't give up. Keep asking, keep monitoring. We find many stakeholders will still help you. If you're only running 1 or 2 campaigns a year and those sponsors aren't helping you, look to increase the amount of activity that you do. Certainly will help the business, and you'll find the more sponsors of campaigns you have, the more people you have invested in your innovation process, the more likely it is that you have people that are prepared to share the success stories. And maybe they can only share a certain level of detail. That's good enough. But if we keep monitoring it, we'll be able to measure, we'll be able to shout about the things that they feel comfortable as sharing, and of course justify our existence as innovation professionals and potentially get further investment once we have those success stories. Now, looking at matching the stakeholder needs, we have a little bit of a challenge. Does the program objective of innovation professionals come first, or is it more important that we generate belief in the program? And this is one of these chicken and the egg situations. Innovation programs are often funded with the longer term in mind, as we mentioned before, but the cultural aspect, the culture that we have may not feel comfortable with that. It may be that certain divisions or certain communities within our organization are much more comfortable with tactical roles, tasks initially. This can be frustrating for an innovation professional. We put out there a desire to look for new ideas, for big picture, blue sky innovations, and relatively few people join in. Sometimes that's because the culture simply isn't ready for those sorts of really strategic, long-term questions. But in our experience, what we've seen, if we put in place a series of more tactical, shorter-term questions initially, and then perhaps in our 4th or 5th or 6th question that we put to the audience, something that has a more strategic target, we find that we get much higher levels of participation in that strategic conversation. So why is that? The question may well be the same, but it's just we give the organization a bit of time to ramp up, to understand what this process of online collaborative innovation is all about, and actually get a little bit more comfortable with it. And of course, with that, take some of the fear factor away, and they begin to see that actually innovating in the longer term is not that really different to the shorter term. The process is the same, but the execution path will be different. And so bear in mind the chicken and also the egg, but think about trying to build belief and confidence in the program whilst you're looking at these longer-term objectives as well. And if that means being more conservative initially to get the organization to come with you, then so be it. It's likely to yield you a more sustainable path. Now, earlier on I mentioned decision-making as part of a core part of the hype process. Clearly, if we give our programs a broader focus, and we focus on efficiency as well as innovation, and we focus on tactical innovation as well as more radical things, we're going to have a lot more content. And therefore, one of the bigger challenges that we face is making sure that we make good decisions and considering all of the content that we have in the right way. More content means we need more rigor, and we may need to refine our decision making a little bit. And the advice I'd offer you here is that you need to review your decision-making process and ensure it's suitable for the different types of activities that you undertake. If you run an efficiency-based campaign, let's say on cost saving, the decision-making process you go through is going to be vastly different than something that looks at radical innovations. You don't necessarily need to go down the same path. But of course, when you've never done this before, it can be hard to know which is the right path. So our advice then is to say, well, test 10% of your content through your chosen process. Confirm with the evaluation team and the sponsor that everybody's comfortable with it, and it's actually yielding the outcomes that you expect. So the best content on a cursory view is actually getting through as you would expect, and we're eliminating things that perhaps won't make it. So test out your process. Don't necessarily be burdened with a process that isn't suitable for the type of innovation activities that you're going through. So if I draw this back to one of our examples in Casa Palace, when they look at breakthrough innovations, they judge them vastly differently to the efficiency-based activities that they do, and they have much more simple criteria to judge that content. Don't force everything down the same path. Now, the good thing from Hype's perspective is we're going to offer you more detail on this soon. There's going to be some articles and more content available over the coming months. So watch out for this area around decision-making and reviewing content in more detail. We're going to be able to show you much more as we move through the next quarter. So finally, let's look at some initial steps that you could take. And some of these put a pull together, some of the things we talked about already, and others there are things that perhaps haven't been covered so far. So think about what you can do now to help improve your return on investment and increase the amount of value that you receive from the program. And certainly think about a range of initial steps that are achievable and help build a broader and demonstrably more successful program. And the key word there is demonstrably. It's fine if we develop a more successful program, but we need to be able to show it. Showing it will keep our senior stakeholders happy. It will encourage the people beneath us. This is a good use of their time and it's an exciting thing to get involved with. And also it will help justify our existence and help justify further investment. And as I said right up at the front, the most successful programs build in long-term sustainable value and they demonstrate some tactical returns first. So the first thing I'd say, and this is a slight sidebar, is consider the packaging, considering how you brand your program. And consider if you wish to broaden your innovation program out, whether the word innovation actually reflects the range of activities that you wish to undertake. You may feel that this is more of a collaborative process now that focuses on innovation and many other things. So think about the branding. The fact of the matter is that the word innovation means many different things to different people. By badging it innovation, badging it something that's creative, there'll be a certain portion of your organization that doesn't feel engaged with that topic, it doesn't feel engaged with that subject. Now that's okay if they don't want to get involved in the breakthrough innovation campaigns that you run, but equally we want them to focus on the efficiency-based activities if they can add some value there. So think very carefully about how you market your program. What's promoting people to join in? What's discouraging from people to join in? Not everybody thinks of themselves as creative, so we want people to feel that this is the home for everybody. Actually branding the program effectively in line with the type of activities that you're undertaking is a crucial part of that. Next, think about some campaigns. It's very easy to, if you have the high platform, to run a very quick campaign focused on something relatively tactical with a measurable win, measurable outcome, something that you can show actually will deliver some value to the organization. So if in doubt, think about cost savings, think about risk reduction, think about speeding up processes. All of these sorts of topics are usually relatively easy to focus on and generate some form of ROI calculation quite quickly. Share your forecast returns. This is something we mentioned earlier on. Make sure that you don't wait until they're realized before we start shouting about. And if you feel you need to be conservative about what those forecast returns are, then do so. Showing any returns at all will be valuable. And remember, looking at improving something that's already in your funnel, perhaps late stage, about to go to market, if you can improve that, make it more profitable, make it quicker to generate the revenues that you expect. In many ways, that's just as helpful as generating something new that may well take much longer to get through the funnel. So think about your entire portfolio and see where you can help. But of course, don't forget about the long term. I think we've drawn this out a little bit already. Think about short-term, long-term, and medium-term activities. Run them in parallel. The audience will self-qualify, so don't worry about bombarding lots of people with different things. If they see a campaign they're not interested in, they'll zone out and they'll focus on other things. We know that innovation managers, the reason we're in place is to actually deliver long-term success for the company in many cases. So let's not forget about that, but the shorter term will certainly help you bring your culture forward and then balance your portfolio later on. Okay, so let's just summarize before we take a few questions. I think you need to recognize, and certainly we've seen this at Height, that your program is at risk unless you can show value. So bear in mind, depending on where you are in your maturity and your evolution of your program, what is it we're recording, what benefits has the organization seen from what we've done, can we justify our existence? And if we're on a different timeline, our funding timeline to the timeline for developing new products or new services, then that's a question mark. We need to think about that quite carefully. But often progress is usually enough. If you can increase the portfolio value or forecast the impact from new activities or current activities, just measuring that better is likely to be helpful. And to be honest, getting demonstrable value isn't that hard. You saw 3 very different types of examples. All were successful in year 1. All yielded significant returns in yield 1. They're certainly yielding much more in years 2 and 3, but they still had very big value delivered relatively quickly. And often if you think about the more tactical things, innovating the business, making it more efficient, more effective, sometimes that's actually easier to get people involved. And once you have generated some value, use those value-based examples to share success. It's going to help boost engagement, it's going to help boost belief in the program, and enable you to be more creative with the types of innovation activities that you focus on. And never stop measuring progress and value. Even if you find that you get ignored by some people, they don't want to share necessarily what's been realized, keep asking and keep asking. Trying to make sure if you've got a broad program, you find those people that will share the successes. It will help you focus your program on the things that offer most material value to your company. So that concludes the formal presentation of the webinar today. And we have a little time for questions. So if you give me a moment, I'm just going to check what questions we have already, and then we will start digging into those. So first question I have here is what types of topics typically yield the fastest ROI? Well, of course, it does depend dramatically on the type of things that you focus on, and I see it in different organizations done differently. Obviously, cost savings are clearly a popular area, and we certainly see some significant quick wins in the cost saving space. But equally, I think that organizations can get a little bit bored of cost savings if they're done year after year with too much regularity. So if you focus on efficiency, look at spicing things up. I think making a process faster whilst remaining as effective as it's always been is quite a good area, which is often neglected with a lot of organizations. So think about making something faster. You can measure that, you can record it, you can share about a forecast cashable saving in the future by making something a few days faster. There's a lot of cost associated with actually putting things into production, so speed is crucial in many cases. The other area which isn't heavily focused on but I think is quite interesting is risk reduction. So if we think about what sort of elements of risk are built into our existing services and products, actually by reducing that risk a little bit can really help reduce the cost of the program as a whole. So actually improving the profitability of the products that you're focused on. Okay, so feel free to add any more questions in that you have. I'm going to just take a look at what we have here. Okay, another question. In your opinion, do you feel there's a big difference in the alignment of enterprise innovation programs compared to a more siloed program where perhaps there's just one business unit? Well, certainly that's true. I think the ones that have siloed activities tend to have two layers of programs. So you have one which is a local layer where certain activities are going to be done within the business unit, and perhaps on time to time they're going to be assessed whether they have more corporate benefit and impact. Those that have sort of more of a sort of common structure where there's no real silos, clearly you can reach out across the enterprise much more readily. But certainly most large organizations do have these silos. Sometimes they're completely separate business units, and in which case you can look at common skill sets or common areas of skill or focus, combine that expertise across disparate skill sets, across disparate geographies, and see if they can work together by sharing best practices and expertise on some of these common value-based challenges. Equally, some organizations have silos where they pass the product from one silo to the next silo to the next silo. And if that's the case, it's great to look at the process in its entirety, because often the people that exist within these silos only see the next silo along, and they don't see the ones beyond it. So often unaware of the decisions that they make may have an impact on the programs that sit 2 to 3 steps down the line. So actually using the software to bring together a whole range of different people across the silos who all have a common vested interest is a very powerful thing to do. So I think that's another great area of looking around efficiency particularly. Okay, another question here is, does continuous improvement activities, they feel like innovation is sort of treading on their toes a little bit if we add efficiency to our programs? Well, certainly in some organizations that can be the case. Depends on the type of continuous improvement program that exists, of course, but often the continuous improvement activities are not focused on a very, very wide range of activities, such as the sort of examples that we talked about earlier on. So often you'll find areas where they're not really focusing on heavily that can still be exploited with collaborative innovation. Equally, you can go to the continuous improvement professionals and say, well, we have some tools here that can help turbocharge your activities. So perhaps we've had 5 people locked in a room, created a new process. Maybe we can use a collaborative campaign to actually test that new process out with a wide, diverse group of people before we go and put it into practice. So often our ability as innovation managers and using innovation techniques can supercharge the programs for other people. Okay, let me just look at the other questions. Okay, obviously, if you invest in hype, there is clearly a cost of doing so. And we have all kinds of different funding models. And so we've got some questions on how hype's priced and the ROI. And really, if you focus on the value-based activities, the cost of the hype platform, the investment you need to make in people and time is not significant. I mean, I painted you a picture there of Casapella's very small organization, Nokia Solutions Network's a much larger organization, and of course DHL Deutsche Post, which is even bigger. The sorts of returns they're getting dwarf the investments required. So I'm not going to provide quotations and pricing on the webinar right now, but if you'd like to talk to people at Hype that can help find out what type of pricing model might be suitable for you, more than happy to make those introductions to the right people. So we have a little bit more time. If there are any more questions, feel free for you to submit, but I think we've gone through the main ones so far. So I'll give you just 1 more minute for any more final questions, and then we will draw the webinar to a close. Okay, so let's look at this next one that's come in. It's cost-saving campaigns. The effort. Okay, I'm just reading whilst I'm talking here. Okay, so is there a lot of effort to deal with cost-saving campaigns? What's the value associated with those? Is it much higher than the return? There is an approach to deal with that. So it's quite a broad topic here around cost savings. What we find is, yes, cost-saving campaigns typically take a little bit more effort in some instances than the more innovation-type programs. And often there are more people involved. So obviously everybody does cost-saving a little different, but if I just draw some synergies for you, typically more people will contribute to cost-saving campaigns. So of course there's an inherent cost of asking people to take a little time out of the day job in order to support that, but that's often dwarfed by the returns. Equally, one person may see cost saving one area of the business, and that can be replicated across other areas. So you can see cost saving and think about sharing best practices. So you can run campaigns that say, what have you done locally that save money that we can share with others? That's a quite efficient way of doing that, which doesn't take too much time. The bigger area of resource and energy and effort really comes on the back end, actually processing, interpreting, looking at the content that's been submitted, aggregating that in some cases, and making some decisions on what you're going to do and take more widely. And often organizations have quite robust processes for dealing with that kind of thing, but equally many do not. So I've seen organizations where they've taken a cross-section of the finance community, have them act as the evaluation team, and they will look and judge, aggregate and set policy on new things that need to be done on the basis of the ideas and information and insights that are shared from their community. So yes, there can be a greater level of effort associated with looking at cost savings, but then the return is often much quicker. And I think that this is a broad subject, and I'd be more than happy to talk to the person that submitted this question in more detail when we have more time. So I think we're out of questions right now. We have another 10-20 seconds to submit something if you'd like to, and otherwise we'll draw this webinar to a close. Okay, so I think we've completed all the questions that we have. I'd like to thank everybody that's attended. It's been great running this basic series for you. Look out for further webinars, as Christoph indicated, and also look out for the interview I'll be doing with Fabian Schlager from Nokia Solutions Networks, who will be able to offer us lots of detail on his program and how he achieves such a compelling return on investment and value-based program. So thank you, Christoph, for facilitating, and yeah, great to speak with you all again.